Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Room AMA. Is this our third rendition of this at this point? Is that where
I
we're at
think
right
it's
now?
our third or fourth one of these. We did have to obviously take off a week because of the Thanksgiving game. We're not going to go live on Thanksgiving.
No.
Probably not the best thing to do to, just go all the way back home, say, hey, thanks for the dinner, go back home, got a live show to record. Now we're going to take that off, but we are back probably here for the rest of the season. I think even after the fantasy football season's over, we might be doing these all the way through. Obviously a lot of people still playing for playoffs, but half the team's probably eliminated at that point, but there's still half the people out there that care. So if they care, we'll be here for y'all.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we had a fun, I guess you want to call it a Thanksgiving game in a way. We had two Thursday night
Better
teams
than
from
anything that played on
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving last week.
Yeah, and so we get a Thursday night game that's actually like competitive, high scoring, just barn burner, like entertaining Thursday night game for once in a long time. So, yeah, man, this was a fun one to watch. Fantasy implications galore. DK going off, CD Lamb getting a shit ton of targets. So it was actually quite a fun game for fantasy purposes, especially as for many of us, like you're either going into the fantasy playoffs, you probably needed some big games from these guys on Thursday night to really kick off a run to the playoffs. So, what were your thoughts on the Thursday night game? What were kind of your biggest takeaways here?
Man, hopefully you weren't going in needing to win and you didn't play against Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, CD Lamb. Luckily, the one place where I played against the Geno Smith and DK Metcalf stack, I'm not competing in that one. So thank God I just take another loss. We take it on the chin and we move on. But there's a lot of teams, man. You ain't even paying attention until Tuesday after tonight if you played against one of those stacks. I mean, can you imagine if you played against a Geno, Dak, DK, and CD stack on the other side? Yeah, I mean, you're done. You just don't have any chance until next week. You just pack it in and say, hey, I'm not even looking at fantasy for another week because these guys went absolutely bonkers tonight. CD Lamb, 17 targets, 12 catches, 116 yards. Dak Prescott with one under 300 yards, 3 touchdowns himself. Geno Smith, another 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. DK Metcalf, 134 yards, 3 touchdowns himself, every single receiving touchdown on the team. Just an absolute barn burner of a game that we typically see on like Sunday night, Monday night football. We don't typically get these on Thursday night football, but both these teams had a full bye week. So it does help whenever you actually have 7 full days of rest coming off of those
For
Thanksgiving
sure.
games to come into the Thursday night games this week. It's what the NFL should do every week. You should only play Thursday night games off of a bye week. Be a lot better football probably, but we're probably not going to see that ever happen in the future because the NFL makes too much money doing what they're doing every single
Of
time.
course. Of course. And should be big thanks to you. Yes, big shout out to DD, Destination Devi. Make sure you check out destinationdevi.com. If you are not part of that community, it's hands down the best place to be for fantasy. Will absolutely change your game. So yes, now is the time to tap in. I know it's the end of the season. I know we're probably wrapping things up. You might be in the playoffs or out of it. So this is the time though, because we got to start scouting prospects for the 2024 class. Tons of incredible content's going to be dropping. Lots of tools that you're going to need to be successful so that you can start looking at some trends of year one players, year two players, and what potential breakouts could be next year. So yes, become part of the Destination Devi community. Check us out on the DD feed. We drop every Tuesday morning. I think it's like a mind meld. So every Tuesday morning
Mornings.
after the weekly recap. But yeah, big shout out to Shimi for joining us here and to DD for having us on. So yeah, man. You mentioned late night creeping. We got DD in the building. Love it. So yeah, we had a good slate. We had some big games. JSN actually led the team in targets, which was surprising. I mean, I guess it's not all that surprising when he runs like 5-yard routes max. He's just constantly running crossing routes, drag routes across the middle. But hey, you know what? He's getting targets. He had some opportunities. Tyler Lockett dropped what I'm going to consider as a game-winning touchdown. Unfortunately, I don't know if he thought a safety was there and he was about to get clobbered, but he definitely, as Scott put it, the alligator arms. It was kind of wild. So unfortunate, but a lot of good things going on in that game. And yeah, good way to start off week 13.
Fantastic way to start off week 13, man. Especially, like I said, when teams are trying to make that playoff push right now. A lot of teams. Hopefully, you're securing those wins instead of taking those L's right now. But what do we got? What do we got outside of this game going forward? Rest of week. What do we want to get into first? We can go start sits. We can go to kind of what we were talking about on the DD pod this week. A little bit of QB carousel. Taking that a little bit deeper dive tonight. What do we really want to get into here?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit quarterback talk here. Obviously, we had two quarterbacks that have had their opportunities to shine and get written off all at the same time. We've heard tons of Dak Prescott talk, Geno Smith talk in the offseason and throughout the year as well. I want to kind of look at these middling QBs. We all know who the good ones are, right? Like we all know who these elite top tier quarterbacks are, and there's really not a whole lot of discussion. Like there's stability with those guys. There's rushing upside with some of them. There's no need to talk about them, but most of our teams don't have them because there's only what 6, maybe 7 at this point that we've kind of identified of top tier elite quarterbacks. Maybe you can argue 8, but even T-Law at this point has kind of put himself a little bit lower. There's been a lot of discussion about that next tier. It's like, what do you value more? Do you value the points that could be scored this upcoming year, like a Kirk Cousins who was smashing until he got hurt? Or do you end up valuing some youth and some upside with, Sam Howell's, Jordan Love? So really, where is that trade-off? So let's kind of touch on some of that there. And let's get into like that. You want to start with the Geno Smith tier, like that kind of range of quarterback?
I want to do one conversation just off the game that we just watched and off the conversation, off the little bit of the last month that we've been talking about, because you brought up a name that I think is a little bit. He's faltering on that line. He was securely locked in the preseason, but I don't know if he's really there anymore. One that I really want to talk about here is who we just saw play tonight, Dak Prescott or Trevor Lawrence. That's where I really want to go to first. What do you think between those two QBs? Because I don't think there's that much other than age. Like, what's the separation between those two? Because right now you've got one player who's playing much better football than the other one, and who's really shown it for a long portion of his career compared to what we've seen out of T-Law. A little bit of like a 6-game sample size at the end of last year. He's never really strung anything together like Dak has kind of done, other than the turnovers that everybody wants to kill these guys for. I don't really care as long as it's not a massive effect in the league that I'm playing in, unless it's like a -3 turnover league. I don't really care. So like, why do we not have these two closer other than just, is it purely age and still relying on the hope of what Trevor Lawrence came in with?
That's what it feels like. It feels like, T-Law has always gotten a pass. We've given the pass for Urban Meyer. We've seen, improvement with Doug Peterson. We were hoping that this is going to be an extra step forward with Calvin Ridley joining the fold, ETN having another year in that system and actually having his own breakout. It just really hasn't materialized for T-Law being like this super efficient, high performing quarterback. We've seen games, but he's a gunslinger. Like we've seen him throw 4 picks in the first half and then throw 4 touchdowns in the second. It's just a tale of two halves for T-Law at times. And there's just not a lot of consistency where when you really look at this, QB9, I think I'm still going to keep A-Rich up there. Maybe you even throw him in that same tier, but T-Law, Tua, Kyler, Dak, and I'm going to put Brock Purdy in there. I think that's really where you draw that line as far as KTC wise, that like, that's that tier. And Kirk Cousins was right there in that same area prior to the injury. Now that Achilles happened, obviously he falls. But I don't have that much separation. And we constantly talk about tiers. Like you obviously don't want to say, oh yeah, QB9 trading for QB13. Like it sounds like you're down tiering quite a bit. But in the end, like I'd be happy to pivot with any of these quarterbacks within that range if I have T-Law. I mean, we saw that T-Law Sam Howell question. Like where are you at right now with T-Law?
I mean, if we're gonna put all those guys in the same tier, T-Law's my last one in that tier. I'd honestly, him and Brock Purdy back to back, splitting hairs kind of between the two. And truthfully, if you're gonna give me the guy who's performed better over the larger sample size, over the sample size of both of them playing, it's probably Brock Purdy. So if you really ask me to rank these guys, I'm probably going Kyler, A-Rich, Tua, Dak, probably Dak and Tua. There's even a little bit of a question right now with the way that Dak's playing. Then you go remaining ones of Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy to finish off that tier. I do think I'm kind of with you that it's a little bit of a flat tier, but I'll still, unless you obviously need the points right now, we're getting to the end of the year though, where teams are pretty much settled. honestly, even with the injury risk, Anthony Richardson is still probably going to be the one for me that's at that top of that tier.
Yeah.
Him and Kyler Murray are the two that just have so much more of an upside than any of these guys do just because of their ground game. And then I think you got a conversation between Dak and Tua to follow those two up.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at this, we talked about this on the DD feed when we dropped our overreaction pod this week. Just looking at the contract situation, we have T-Law with long term. They're going to get it. T-Law, Dak, Tua is going to get a contract. Brock Purdy should get a contract barring injury. I mean,
next year.
Yeah, next year. He's not eligible for extension.
Year.
Exactly. That's the big key for him, is like he still has that risk of like losing immense value just because of something, but he seems like he's their future. I mean, he's done enough in that offense. So let's just put this out there. All of these guys have at least, I think some of them are going to get 5 year, or like T-Law will probably get a 4 or 5 year deal. Dak will probably get a 4-year deal. Let's say they all get 3-year deals. Trevor, Tua, Dak, and Brock Purdy. How does that change things for you? Like, again, so we're talking Brock Purdy next year getting an extension. So that's what, 4 years in that system. How do you feel? Does that change things up for you at all?
I don't think the contracts matter. As long as all these guys get the contract, there's nothing within the contracts that actually makes any sort of difference to me. No, like really, you're looking at every single one of these guys. You assume that, T-Law being what he is, he's definitely good enough to secure a contract. I think the question is, does he get it this offseason? Because he's eligible for it this offseason. I don't think I've seen enough of a body of work to say that he's deserving of a Trevor Lawrence, or he's not deserving of like the Justin Herbert, the Joe Burrow contracts, the Josh Allen contracts, Jalen Hurts contracts that we've seen some of these guys get after year 3. I haven't seen enough from that man to actually say that he's going to get that $250 million contract extension after 3 years. No. So you got to play out a full 4th year for me. I'll probably pick up the 5th-year option after that if it still hangs on, but we need to see more out of Trevor Lawrence before I get to that point. So I think the two that do get the contract extension are Tua and Dak. There's no way that after the season that Dak has put on so far, they probably should have signed him in the offseason to that contract extension that they were all talking about. They do still, though. Everybody was saying, and they could still go with it. They've got Trey Lance, who's going to put that contract pressure on Dak Prescott. He's going to be the starter next year because Dak just won't be able to sign that contract because of the pressure that Trey Lance is putting on him as the QB in Dallas of the future. You got to take that into consideration, though, right?
No. Okay. First of all, for those that are here, make sure you do like this video, subscribe to our channel. Appreciate you being here. If you have questions, whether it be sit questions, trade questions as we're hitting deadlines, drop them in chat. Like, let us know some of your questions, concerns, things that are going on, and kind of where you're at with some of the things we're going off on. We're going to talk a little quarterback talk. We will get into our start sits later, but just wanted to throw that out there. If you're here, you got questions, we got answers, let us know. But yeah, I'm with you when it comes to the T-Law talk. I don't think I think it's going to come down to whether or not T-Law is willing to take less. Like, I'm sure he's going to get an offer of an extension. Is it going to? I don't think it's going to be that, like you said, that $50 million range.
Not getting no 5 year. Like, if you want a 3-year, $120 million on top of what you've already got, sure, like we'll give you that because it's going to be cheaper for us now than to do it in the future.
Yeah, but and I think that's kind of what it's going to be like. Is it's going to be a team friendly deal. And maybe there's some additional incentives, and your boy Bake coming in here. Hopefully we got all Stroud coming in here, getting a 12-year, $869 million deal. Yeah. Fully guaranteed. Setting the market.
That's that David Mulligetta contract talk. I believe somehow they're going to get around not waiting 3 years. They're going to give it to him this offseason. David Mulligetta he's that good of a contract negotiator that he's going to find the loophole in the NFL system, going to get that contract set in stone right now. $1 billion right off the bat. 869 probably low ball offer. 15 years, billion. Think we do that in the offseason. We'll find a way.
Can't wait till that gets clipped and thrown on YouTube. So that'll be everywhere. Yeah. So enough of that tier in a way. Like, I feel like that's like the true second tier of quarterbacks that I'm still invested in. I'm still happy to move around in, but you are right. I think T-Law's had a fall from grace. I do think you're having trouble actually selling T-Law. Like that trade that was discussed in chat today was like someone valuing T-Law and Sam Howell at a very similar level. I am not quite there.
I can't blame him that much. I know you're not. Let's go into the Sam Howell one then. Let's go into the Sam Howell one because you are definitely not on the. This is extension from the DD pod that we just posted, the overreaction pod on the DD feed. If you want to go back and listen to QB Carousel, not even hardly any dynasty talk, although it is baked into it, but it is truly just, like, what is the quarterback class, or what does quarterback landscape look like in 2024? This is one of our biggest contention points, was this Sam Howell one, because I'm fully on. I don't care what happens. I do think Riverboat Ron is sailing on his riverboat down the stream. He ain't coming back anywhere near Washington next year. He's going to ride out into the sunset on this year and going to be canned next year. Bieniemy, I don't know if you've actually seen enough outside of just high volume passing, not winning games, to really make him a head coach. So what does this offense look like? I don't know, but what I do know is that they should trust Sam Howell to be building around a team for next year, because you've got the rookie quarterback in there already. You're paying him almost nothing, and he's at least serviceable enough to try to build a system around him whenever you're in this full, basically like burn it to the ground rebuild that they look like they're in right now, at least in my opinion.
I mean, I feel like you and I, like the fantasy community, are just blinded by the stats. And I get it. Like, when you throw the most pass attempts in the league and you have the most completions in the league because you're chucking the rock all game long, but you're just getting pummeled back there, just absolutely getting abused. He's not getting Derek Carr, he's getting David Carr abused. And as a Texans fan, I'm sure you probably can. Maybe you don't. You were a baby.
I wasn't around back then, but yeah,
you weren't even around back then. Holy cow, that dude's just getting abused. I do think that there's a path to him starting next year. I don't know, and this is my big concern, is honestly, I feel like Sam Howell will live and die with Bieniemy. Like, Bieniemy's the reason why he's chucking the rock the way he is. A different system's probably going to try and rein him in, give him something a little bit different to work with. Then you're talking about Sam Howell learning a whole new offense. They're probably going to bring in a quarterback because it is going to be a new regime. That's like my legit concern with Sam Howell. That's why I have no problem moving off of Sam Howell. I would move off of Sam Howell for T-Law. Like, that's a move I'm making. People are wanting the points this year, and they think that Sam Howell's just going to be a top 10 quarterback. Like, get me that tier up. I'm out. Like, it's not that he's bad. He's going to put up points for you down the stretch. It's just long-term stability, organizational stability. No clue what that team is actually going to do. And Bake, I'm glad you remember those days, because that was a scary time. Yeah, man, like, it's just,
he was definitely around during those.
He was definitely around. So yeah, it's just one of those things that when I look at a quarterback like that, no draft capital investment, and when it comes to like efficiency, and I know QBR isn't necessarily anything to go with, but he's like definitely in the bottom half of the league when it comes to QB efficiency. So that's kind of my concern for him beyond this year.
I will tell you though, like, it is a completely fake value in Sam Howell right now. Like, QB 15
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence
Okay.
is nowhere near, because at least in the one league where I've been trying to pivot off of Sam Howell, I mean, we'll put this straight into an actual context, because I don't think too many of them are in here right now. We're probably pretty good there, but no, it's basically, so Sam Howell has a week 14 bye. Our playoffs start next week, and I'm not going to secure the bye. I need to get off of the points in Ballers 24 League. I need to get off the points of, I have a full commander stack that's going to be on bye during the week that I need to play in to advance. So I have Sam Howell, I have Terry McLaurin, I have Curtis Samuel, and I have Logan Thomas. Like, I need to get off of those guys to try to actually get a win in next week so that I can advance in the playoffs. I'm trying to down tier this guy to Matt Stafford, and I can't do it.
Wow.
Russ Wilson, Geno Smith, Jared Goff. I haven't even tried a T-Law, but like, yeah, I've gone through everybody in this list that we're seeing in here. I've gone to Jordan Love, I've gone to Jared Goff, I've gone to Russell Wilson, I've gone to Baker Mayfield, I've gone to Geno Smith. I can't get any of them done.
Can't get any of them done for Sam Howell?
All that I'm trying to do is send a quarterback and the wide receiver and swap them straight. And I can't get it done.
So it's funny because, like, I know where my team is at in that league, and I know that I'm not trying to make the playoffs. So I just went there. I was like, maybe I have somebody that I can trade you. Nope, I definitely do not. Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, and then of course I lost Jimmy G. So I have no quarterbacks down the stretch here, which again is probably why I'm not doing all that hot in that league. So
maybe not. Maybe in a super flex league where he's
maybe
trying to start 2 quarterbacks a week, having no quarterbacks is not the optimal strategy for winning.
maybe not. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and Bake kind of said it, whoever Bieniemy is coaching, like that's who Sam Howell is. Like that's the reason why, like if you look at what the Chiefs methodology towards the passing game, like they're like, we don't care about receivers because they have Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of the flip. Like it's the same kind of offense where they're just like, we're going to chuck the ball around the field. You don't know which wide receiver is going to get it each week in and week out. But that, I guess that's the struggle you have. I mean, I can't believe you can't get any deals done for Baker or for.
I've been trying them 2 weeks
Baker
straight, man. I
Jr.
can't get a single one in.
He's Baker Jr. That's what he is. But yeah, like I am curious just on that. I see a couple questions here we'll get to as well. When it comes to Sam Howell, like let's just say, does it change your perception if they do clean house, like and Bieniemy's gone, or do you think that Bieniemy's going to be like he has to be there? Because to me, that's my only concern is
I don't think it matters that much for me because Sam Howell's going to play the same way. Like I don't really care too much. What else do you really have? You've got Brian Robinson, who they're still pounding the rock with right now. You're going to lose Antonio Gibson, so you have Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez are the only 2 really running backs there right now. So what system are you going to bring in that's going to change how this offense runs? You still got Terry McLaurin, I believe. You still got Jahan Dotson. Logan Thomas, I guess. I don't even know what his contract situation is, but like it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right? So no, I think he's going to have to play almost the exact same way, and that is I'm just going to run back, I'm going to throw the ball, and then he has the rushing upside too. Like the only way you can tell me that I'm not really concerned about Sam Howell is that there's another quarterback coming in, and I don't understand why, with the body of work that he's put on the field right now, that you wouldn't at least give him another year to try to build something else in a new system.
The way I'm looking at this is literally it cannot get any better for Sam Howell. It just can't. Like he can't pass the ball more. Like it's
fine because he's like a top 12 quarterback in some formats right now.
Fantasy. You sound like and you're gonna hate me for this. We might end the stream on this one. You sound like all the Justin Fields stands out there, where it's like he's so good in fantasy.
That's fine because he's in his second year, and I still have another year. Like I don't care anymore about next year. Like any further than next year, I don't care. All that I'm looking at is the production for next year that I believe is secure.
Okay. All right. I can see a path to him starting next year. I can. But when I look at that team, like even if he is the starter, like his fantasy production, like it's a sell high moment for him. And as you said earlier, like his value right now, it is true. It's a faux value. Like it's league dependent. You have to have a Sam Howell stan in your league in order to capitalize on what QB 15. Like you have to. I'd take Jordan Love. I'd take Jared Goff, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson. I would honestly take all of those guys over Sam Howell beyond this year. Like if I need a playoff run for Sam Howell, fine. I'll keep him. I have no problem taking the fantasy points. But this offseason, you better believe that dude is not on my roster. Selling him at peak value or at peak opportunity and just chucking up the deuces. So
one more before we move off the Sam Howell. Like, so just from an organizational football standpoint, whenever you're burning this thing to the ground, it looks like even if you sell off, which is your fear of losing Bieniemy, right? Like it doesn't get any better once you lose Bieniemy, probably gets a little bit worse, and I can agree with that.
Yep.
What sense would it make to replace Sam Howell, who's on the rookie contract already, with just say like some bridge quarterback? Like it doesn't make sense to go into free agency and bring anybody into me because you already have a contract that's on the rookie contract, 5th round deal. Like he's going to be there. And they probably need so much else around the team. There's no reason to draft your quarterback now. And they're not going to be in a range to draft the quarterback high unless they've mortgaged so much of their future to get to that point. And if we go over, let's just go over to Tankathon now.
I already got you, buddy. So they are a top 5 pick right now.
They are in the 5th right now. I honestly do not think they were that high.
You want to know their remaining schedule? They got the Dolphins this week. They do have the on the road at the Rams, on the road at the Jets, the 49ers, and the Dallas Cowboys. They could easily lose all of those games. Maybe they beat the Rams.
They could,
but like that's a wrap.
They could
Like,
potentially win 2 of those games.
Potentially. We'll call it 2 competitive games, potentially, but they could also go 0-5. So like I hear you, but and with the way that the quarterback market is trending for the NFL draft, with the number of quarterbacks that are in there, like they are going to be in a spot to make a difference making move in the first round, or even potentially in the high second round, if that's what they want to do with what this QB class looks like it's going to be. And I think that's going to be enough where if a new regime comes in and drafts a quarterback in the first or second round, early second, still have faith in a quarterback like that. It's at least a competition going into next year, at the very least a competition. So there's no for sure guarantee. He has to make it through the draft for me. And that's my big fears. I don't think he survives the draft. And if he does, I don't think he's starting the full season.
He's my guy, like last year's Geno, that I will bet on to survive the draft, because everybody was saying with the Geno, like obviously different scenario. Geno was a playoff quarterback. He was a borderline playoff quarterback. But I was fully on Geno surviving the draft, and I was pivoting off all of my like Jimmy G's because I didn't think he had as much security to survive the draft. But I did really like this question. Glad you brought it up. Can you tear down from the Howell to the Levis? Plus, I think you definitely can right now. Levis has been pretty gross, especially he's had the one good game, that one 4-touchdown game when D-Hop had 3 touchdowns, I think, in that game. Yeah, other than that, there's been a lot of games that he's put up single-digit fantasy points. It hasn't been great other than that, right? So you can definitely do it. I think the question then becomes, should you do it, and what's the plus to make you do it?
I say is like, what's the plus? Like that's the big thing for me. Like Sam or Levis in a second. Is that enough for you to move off of him? Because I don't think you're getting Levis in a first.
I don't know if you're getting first. And then it goes back to what's the actual value of either of these guys? Because I don't think you're getting a first almost for. You could probably pull a 25 first for Sam Howell. Levis, I don't think you're pulling a 25 or 24 or 25 first right now. So can you? I mean, maybe if you value Sam Howell at like the 25 first, you could pull 2. You can pull this. Levis is saying he's a second, and then you can pull the second on top of it.
Yep,
I'd be okay with that. I think you have.
It's going to be league dependent too.
Pretty much as much security that Levis is a starter next year as Howell is a starter. I'd honestly say that Howell has maybe a little bit more. No, I'm not going to say that. I say they're the same for me, that they have security of being a starter next year. So I'll take a second.
That's a move I'd be willing to make, like especially if I'm not needing the points. Find someone who is looking for a quarterback. There's plenty of QB injuries out there right now. Someone that is contending will probably need those points for you. So if you can get Levis off of their roster in a second, it's probably going to be a mid to late second is most likely what the scenario here. I'm absolutely willing to do that. Gives me 2 shots. Levis could very well be Sam Howell production wise in the future. Beyond this year, let me clarify that. Beyond this year, Levis is not going to be Sam Howell this year. But and then you get another Dart second round pick that you can utilize in the offseason as a trade piece or whatever. But yeah, no, I like that question. Think that's a good opportunity to kind of look at a pivot. Yeah, speaking of pivots, let's pivot away from your Washington Commanders. Old Baker Mayfield Jr., that is Sam Howell. So this whole tier right here that we've kind of talked about, Will Levis is actually up here. I'm looking at Sam Howell, Jordan Love, Bryce Young, Jared Goff, Levis, Watson. I want to start there. Actually, I do have a question for you with Deshaun Watson, because I know you don't have his jersey behind you anymore. However,
I never had it. I had a Randy Bullock
jersey.
Randy Bullock jersey. I never had a Deshaun Watson jersey. Come on.
I mean,
respectful.
I mean, you had it. I mean, totally off target. All right, so Deshaun Watson here. I don't know what to do with him anymore. Like, you can't move him. Like, look at that value drop.
That thing is gross.
Like, he was legitimately in discussion to be that top 8 quarterback prior to the year.
We were putting him up there. It was wrong, but we were putting him up there. We haven't seen it in a while. We saw flashes of it this year. I don't take it's hard because now you're like 3 years out from actually seeing Deshaun Watson be what we thought he could be, right? But he was playing hurt this entire year, right? So it's hard to put so much stock into this year. But then again, like now you're playing for the 4th year out from him actually being a fantasy relevant quarterback in terms of like being a quarterback one. And it's a lot to bank on that he's going to come back ever. I think he has more of a trajectory just to sit in this middling range. I think he's properly priced right now. I think he's properly priced in this Russell Wilson, Jared Goff range. And I don't think we really need to have, because I think everybody was the expectations were so high from the few of us who were in at that like QB8 to QB10 price that the production that we got was just so disappointing, and especially with all the injuries on top of it, that we were just bound to be disappointed by what happened. Now, once you have the expectation that he's just going to be this like middling quarterback too, then he provided exactly what that was outside of the weeks that he missed due to injury, and obviously down the stretch for the rest of this year. So I do think that this is like just a mismanagement of expectations for what we got. I think he's appropriately priced where he is now, though.
So he has started 5 games this year, like that he completed. He started another game, but he got knocked out in the first quarter. He banged up, whatever. He played 5 complete games. How many times do you think he was a QB1?
1.
4.
1 or 0. Really? Okay.
QB5, QB10, QB8. I guess, sorry, 4. It was 3. QB14. So he was a high end QB2, but still. So he had 4 reasonably good games. And I'm with you. Like the injury issues, it looked really, really fucking gross at times where you're just like watching him play and you're like seeing him throw to the feet of a wide open wide receiver crossing the middle. And you're just like, what is happening? So I guess what I'm wondering is, if you have Deshaun Watson on your roster, are you selling for anything in this tier?
If you got Deshaun Watson on your roster, your season's over. No, I'm not doing it. Like, can I pivot to Russell or could I pivot to Jared Goff? Like, I might do it, depending on ancillary pieces, but I don't think I'm doing it straight up. Jared Goff, I'd probably pivot straight up. I'd probably take Jared Goff.
Okay.
Russ, I think is the wash. I could take either of them and I really wouldn't care. And then, I mean, this is obviously not competing, right? Competing or not competing, you just regardless of where you're standing currently within fantasy football playoffs or being outside looking in. I think that's about where I'm at, though. I think those 3 are pretty even. I'd lean Jared Goff being the best out of them. And then if I could get some ancillary pieces that I like more, I could pivot to Russell Wilson if I wanted to.
And so I'm going to make the argument here that if you are not a true contender, like even if you're a playoff team that like is a fringe playoff team, but you look at the other, top 3, top 4 teams in that league and you're like, I got no shot. Like I'm making the playoffs. That's wonderful. I think I'd actually be interested in a pivot to Deshaun Watson because of 1, where his value is, and 2, if he does play well next year, and it's a gamble for sure, but I don't think it gets much worse than this. Like he might be able to drop a little bit, but I think everyone is just out on Deshaun Watson, but he's also a guy that could jump right back into that Kyler, Dak, Brock Purdy tier. I don't think he's going to be top 8. As much as we've seen it in the past of him being elite level production, he might have games like that. But I think we've seen that the inconsistencies are absolutely there. And unless they fire Stefanski or there's a different offensive scheme, I just, even then, I don't know that that's going to be a recipe for success for Deshaun Watson. But he is someone that I think can jump a tier where the rest of these guys, I really don't feel that about any of them. I think Goff is where he could be the top of this tier, but Goff, Jordan Love, Levis, Russ, even like they're all high end QB2s at best. None of them I don't think can jump into that top 12 or 8 to 13, 8 to 14 range.
Yeah, Goff's the one that I think is more borderline of like that Dak Prescott trajectory,
fair.
right? That we've talked about. So I think he's a little bit close to that. The Brock Purdy, if they would rely on the passing game as much as some of these other teams do, what takes away from a lot of Jared Goff, right, is that they have such an effective running game as well. And whenever you have that, less passing touchdowns and less just efficiency. And we do see games like he just sucked against the Bears, like normally you don't see those games from those type of guys that you want to put into that like 10 to 14 range that you do see from Jared Goff time to time. So the consistency isn't there as much, but he's the one that I would try to put a little bit higher up into that upper echelon. But I'm with you that like if Deshaun Watson could ever come back, and he's probably the one, Russ, all these guys. I mean, they could get there with a six. All these guys could get there if they put together a 6-game stretch that looks good, right? Like any one of them could go. It's what Dak Prescott is doing right now, because he was in this range probably like 2 months ago, whenever the season first started, and he was throwing picks and everybody wanted to write him off. It's exactly where Dak was.
I mean, Dak's had 6 straight top 6 performances now. Like he's really like torn it up lately. So that's the big thing with Dak. I do think that we've always underappreciated what Dak could do, and it's Dallas. It's a polarizing team. He's a polarizing quarterback for that team. So it's always one of those players that is easy to react on. But yeah, like this week, I mean, he already put up 28 points. He had since week 6, QB1, QB3, QB2, QB1, 17, QB3, QB2 this week, but of course we played one game. So but he's going to have another high-end performance to say the least. And so he's done enough where you see him there, but he's never going to put himself in that top 8. I don't see any way that he's going to get himself there unless he has a season of what he's done the past 7 weeks. And that is possible. I do think Dak is good enough to do it, but
then you'll have an age argument, even though he's 30.
Yeah.
For some reason, the age will come into effect whenever he's probably going to play another 8 years in the league, and your dynasty team isn't going to be around in 8 years more than likely, but age will come into it for some reason. But no, like, look at this. I mean, it's all of October. He was QB 18. And then he puts together a 6-week run, and he's all the way back up to QB 12. Like any one of those, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, if they put together a 6-week stretch like that, what Dak has done. Now, Dak's, I think, is better than all those guys and is a little bit more able to do that, over a 6-game stretch. But any of those guys could put together a stretch like that, and any of them would vault right back up to QB 12 to QB 14.
So I'm curious on this, because this has been a conversation that we have had in the past, and it's been a learning experience for us over the past year or so. Selling quarterbacks straight up for picks, this tier. I'm not even going to say this tier. Like, let's put Jared Goff above his KTC ranking of QB 18, but let's go Sam Howell, Jordan Love, Bryce Young, all of anyone below that, Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield. It's always been one of those conversations where it's like, oh, it's tough to sell a quarterback. There we go. I got pick values in there. It's tough to sell a quarterback for just a pick and not getting a quarterback back, because you're banking on that pick being basically like, looking at a late 25 first for Jared Goff. You're banking on that late 25 first in 2 years, giving you Jared Goff equivalent value. I would scroll down. Yeah, like there you go. A late 26 first for Will Levis, Deshaun Watson. Like that's where I want to see those kind of guys. Russell Wilson for a second.
No.
Kirk Cousins for a second. Okay. So at what point in the QB rankings are you willing to take a pick and just move on? Or what team situation are you willing to just take the pick and move on, because the liquidity can be reinvested into the quarterback position? Because I know when we're looking at it in terms of like, hey, you're going to have to take that pick and draft that player. You don't have to draft that player. I know mentally it's like, yeah, when when the trade value, it's like, oh, well, I have to do that. But what can you do with that pick? So at what point in this tier are you willing to sell a quarterback for just a straight pick to make a move in the future?
I mean, obviously, what are you getting back? Are you going to give me exactly what KTC is telling me they're worth? Then I'm going Josh Dobbs. Like, then I'll sell for a second on Josh Dobbs.
Okay.
I'm not nowhere higher than that though. Whenever
Hold up. Josh Dobbs is QB 20. He's higher than Daniel Jones and Matt Stafford right now. God, keep trade cut. Get your life together.
top 10
Um,
QB on the season, man. Top 10
I,
QB
I
on the
know,
season.
I know, I know. I guess he's going to be the next Geno Smith. Maybe he is.
I don't know about that. They already said they're reevaluating their quarterback position this last week. Right after we dropped the QB carousel episode, we're like, he's
I
gonna be a
know.
starter next year. That was a little bit of a rough one coming out next week. But I do think maybe a little bit of buy low on Josh Dobbs if you really wanted. I think you could probably buy him for some thirds after that narrative came out, and I think he starts a good majority. Even if they roll out Jaron Hall or Nick Mullins, I believe Josh Dobbs comes right back in within a couple of weeks here. But again, fantasy season's almost over. What does it really mean for you? You're really banking on next year. So you're more just playing, do they re-sign him and do they play the Kirk Cousins game? But regardless of that, getting back to the question at hand, where would you actually sell for what the pick value is telling you what it's worth? Deshaun Watson seconds? No, not selling Deshaun Watson for seconds. Will Levis, I mean, 26 first. I'm not even evaluating a 26 first as an actual asset yet. It's still like months down the road before I evaluate that as an actual asset. So we're not evaluating that. 25 first, Will Levis, I'll bail on that. I'll do that.
You're not getting a 25 first right now for him, even though
But
KTC
you're
says
not.
so. Let's
But you're
go.
not.
Let's go 24 early second. Do you think you can get a 24 early second for Will Levis? And are you out at that price?
Probably not.
I'm out. I think I think I'm taking that liquidity. I think I'm taking that early second. I think the depth in the class for 24. I think 24 is the key here. For me at least, because I do think that there's enough depth in this class that people are going to be very, very interested. There's some very polarizing quarterback names. Not only, when you're looking at potentially 5 top 60 quarterbacks, maybe 6 top 60 quarterbacks, maybe more, who knows? But like, let's say there's 5. So then you have this entire wide receiver class. You have the tight ends that are in here with Jatavian Sanders and Brock Bowers. Like, I do think this is going to be a very interesting class to have early seconds, because I think that people are going to want to acquire them. It's going to be reminiscent of, was it 2021 with Jalen Waddle, when like we saw Waddle or Smitty basically at the 112, 201 because of all of the quote unquote elite quarterbacks in that class. When people are taking Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and yeah, I think that's kind of the feeling I have in the 24 class. So like in general, 24 seconds, early seconds, even early to mid, I'm very interested in. I do think there's a line though. Like, I'm with you. I don't think I'm trading Watson, Goff, Bryce Young for even not re-rolling the dice on that. Russ would be one that, like, depending on my team construction, I'd be interested in potentially moving off of Russ. And when you get lower than that, I'm fine. When you get into the let's scroll down to the
you get
pickets.
into seconds and late first, and I'm just like, no, like why would I? Because I'm looking at it like worst case scenario, because I'm the risk adverse here. I know what the capital can do for me, and if you're in a league that's active and you can flip that value in for more and you can tier it up, fine. Be my guest. Go and do it. It's probably the better move. But if you're in a more stagnant league and you're forced to make a
That's
pick,
true.
good luck. Good luck returning Jared Goff for a late first ever. You really want to bet on Bo Nix or Michael Penix to become your next Jared Goff? Like, more than likely, they're Mac Jones, and they fizzle out within a year or two.
There's a couple questions, Adam. We're going to get yours up here next, and Bake. This is just really, really, really easy. Caleb Williams. So Caleb Williams, not even a question.
You pull my response up to that one. People are going to be asking Joe Burrow or Caleb. Like, that's the level that people are going to be asking in dynasty football landscape. He's going to come in stupidly high, way overvalued to what he should actually be. No, it's going to be a much more different conversation than Deshaun Watson or Caleb. Now, NFL, a little bit different. You still want Caleb because of contract situations. It's still not a question. In any scenario that I think you can put in front of me, you want Caleb Williams.
So Adam, real quick here, we're going to read this one. If you are still around, I want to know if you have any draft capital, 24, 25. If you have your picks and then if you have any additional picks as well. So if you can drop that into the comments here as well while we read this one out. But yeah, just to kind of real quickly recap that conversation. Like, I do think it is league dependent. Like, know your league when it comes to taking the liquidity. Like, if you have an active league that you are able to make moves like that, and you can take that pick in the off season when rookie season is full hype and everyone is just ready to go and buy Bo Nix and buy, JJ McCarthy, like buy all these guys. I think that's a good point where you're going to be able to take that pick value and capitalize on it. But if it is a little bit more stagnant league, it's going to be harder to make those moves. So Adam, if you are still around, again, throw out that draft capital that you do have in the chat here so we can look at that. So what should I do with my 12 team PPR 7-5 team? Trade deadline not passed, so I'm guessing it's coming up quickly here. You got
probably at the playoffs.
Yeah. So either at the playoffs or so a week or potentially even this week. T-Law and Hal. Funny, we talked about both of those
extensively.
Keenan, Dell, Chase, Ridley, Kyron. JT's hurt, so that's going to be a struggle as the 7-5 team trying to win out. And I would love to know where you're at in the standings as well, if you can. Warren, Charbonnet, Kelsey, and then the Miami D. And then I also would love to know if this is
Yeah, you got to kind of give a dynasty redraft here is the big thing, especially as you're playing a defense.
I saw the defense and I was like,
that's
whoa.
the one that's like the kicker at the real end, right? 12 team PPR, 7-5 teams. You're probably fringe playoff right now is what I'd assume. You're probably sitting in that like 5 to 7 range in standings is where I'm going to guess here. T-Law and Howe, good enough at quarterback. At least you're playing Superflex, so that does lead a little bit more to a dynasty landscape compared to redraft.
I don't know that this is Superflex either. We don't have a lot of context. So Adam, if you're around, drop. I want to know if this is Superflex. Start how many?
That's true. Yeah.
If this is a start 8 or start 9 type of league. So let's answer it both ways. Let's do redraft, start 8 or 9, and let's do Superflex, or let's do
Dynasty
start 10. Dynasty Superflex start 10. So we'll answer both of those so that this way we have context for both ways, just to kind of let you know how we'd address it. So go ahead, Cody. Sorry for interrupting there.
No, you're good. Like, the context is all that matters here. You need a lot of context to actually be able to answer these questions really well. And definitely not a fault for not providing enough context. We're always like, hey, I want a paragraph goddamn of context before I actually answer something most of the time. Yeah, literally everything that you can provide. But no, so we got T-Law and how you're looking at that. I'm gonna go for the redraft perspective first. I'm gonna go for the 1QB perspective. Yep. You're probably starting Hal on most weeks, I'd assume, which is honestly more detrimental about T-Law's value, like we were talking about earlier. So I'll be rolling out Hal. We do have that bye week coming up in week 14, so that might be a thing that you want to pivot from, but I think I'd be okay with just rolling out T-Law, not knowing what their matchup is in week 14 off the top of my head. Keenan, Dell, Chase, and Ridley, stacked wide receiver room. I'm perfectly fine rolling that out there. You got the wide receiver 1. Chase, obviously a little bit hampered because of the Jake Browning quarterback situation, but with these wide receivers, I'm perfectly fine there. The running back is where you're going to be hurting, right? You're rolling out Kyron and Warren, Kelsey, Sharbs, but he got hurt during that game.
That's
though.
True.
Looks
That's
like
so true.
Yeah, like you're talking about JT being injured. It looks like you probably just picked up another Charbonnet injury, and we're rolling out DJ Dallas for the next couple of weeks if Kenneth Walker can't get back next week. So the running back room is where you're really going to be hurting here. If you don't need to start all of these wide receivers, if we're talking redraft here, you're going to be trying to trade away one of these. I'd be trying to trade away Chase if somebody still values Chase like they normally would if he didn't have the quarterback change, and trying to get an elite running back here. Can I get to like the Breece Hall, the Austin Ecklers, that type of range, the really leaders at the running back position to try to backfill for the JT and probably Charbonnet that I just lost this week.
Yeah, that's what I was. The very first thing that looked, when we're talking, this is again redraft look and redraft view of this. Chase is going to be the name that is probably still overvalued. And yes, he still can have some very good games, but he's also going to be the one that could potentially net you the most return. And I'm looking to add a running back and maybe a wide receiver depth piece. Like, can you get a 2-for-1 for Chase? I mean, if you can get an absolute elite tier running back, yeah, all good. Absolutely down to do that. What up, Caleb? And so we have T-Law. So I'm just thinking starters. T-Law, Keenan, Dell, Chase, Ridley. There's 5. Kyron and Warren. So that's your weakness. That takes us to 7, and 8 would be Kelsey, 9 with the Miami D. So maybe you're not starting one of those wide receivers. Yeah, it depends on how many you have to start. So if you were only starting 3 of the 4, then yeah, sell Chase, go get yourself an elite running back and an elite in points per game. Like that's what I'm looking for, is like not necessarily the elite name. Give me, I don't even know if you can't get CMC at this point for him, but
No
what's
chance.
what's
No
another?
chance.
Do you take a shot like as a 7-5 team in a redraft? Do you take a shot on like gambling on Eckler plus? Like, do you
Eckler's
take
the
that?
one who has the biggest plus playoff matchup. So if you do get to the playoffs, he has the
Yeah,
biggest plus playoff matchup out of anybody, I believe, for running backs against fantasy defenses. So I mean that'd be the one. He'd be one of the top ones I'd be trying to acquire. Him, the Brees Halls. Brees Hall's been struggling without the quarterback
yeah, man.
being solidified there, and Aaron Rodgers isn't coming back, even though that practice window opened up. I don't think that's a realistic shot,
A
and your
real thing,
fantasy
yeah.
playoffs are probably over anyway if that does happen. So yeah, you're probably just go. I would just go through all of the top 12 running backs, maybe top 15 running backs, and just send Chase straight up and just spam it out and just try to get the running back to fill that. Let's go into the let's go into the superflex side of this though. Let's go into the dynasty superflex side here, because I do think it's a drastically different conversation, right? Whenever you're talking about the dynasty landscape of this, because I'm not competing anymore. Like I'm taking this out of contention. I'm punting this to next year. Even if you're there, unfortunately, hopefully you got a couple of leagues where this isn't your one that you're trying to bank on. But this
Yeah.
doesn't have the horses to get there.
Yeah, when you look at this, and I'm going to assume this is actually one QB based on having only T-Law now. Like I'm guessing in Superflex, you're not rolling that out there. But either way, like forget the quarterback position. Yeah, this is absolutely a team for next year. Move yourself, Keenan Allen. Get off of him if you can get either draft pick liquidity. That's actually what I'm going for. Draft pick liquidity. Try and just get
Pull
yourself
it first.
try and pull a high end from the top team if you can, and just take the 112. Like I'm good with it. Whatever, I'm out. And then yeah, you can roll out Charbonnet, Kyron, JT, figure out what's going to happen next year. Kelsey gone.
Kelsey moving to Andrews if you can. If Andrews isn't already on a tank team.
I'm getting dirty, man. We're gonna go all the way down to Trey McBride. Like we're gonna go see if we can get Kelsey for Trey McBride and a good plus. Like not
You're
necessarily
not
just
getting a
throwing
good
away.
plus anymore. No,
Can
they're
you get Trey McBride in
almost straight up. Almost
you
straight
think
up.
no?
Legitimately, yep.
I
Let me
wish
go
I
pull
had.
up KTC tight end rankings, but it's legitimately almost straight up.
Holy cow! That is absolutely wild. But I mean, hey,
Literally back to fucking back.
oh wait, hold on. We got to do the question.
No, we skipped it.
Devontae Turpin, Chris Watkins. Come on, what are we doing, KTC? Who cares?
Turpin. We keep Turpin and
baby.
cut him rest. Who cares? But yeah, literally back to back.
That's nuts. And then you're looking at the value too. There's a value gap, so that's a tier break for sure. But man, you're not getting Andrews. I get, you know what, with the injury, I
You can
think
get Andrews. Yeah,
you might be able
you can
to.
pivot down to Andrews. If the team that's buying, if the team that's selling off, they've probably already made that move. Like they've probably already, if they're still pushing in, they've probably already sold off that Andrews. But if it's a little bit of a slower league, that's the first one you're looking at. If you can't sell off of that, then you can 1-for-1 swap Trey McBride. Like that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, I guess because he is producing right now, the need to trade away McBride just isn't there. So yeah, that's probably the pivot. Yeah, try and do Mark Andrews. Like even if I have to kick in,
I would honestly go grosser. I would get out of the elite I would get out of the elite tight end range, because I don't think that Trey McBride's elite. I would honestly punt it all the way down. I'd pick up future draft capital.
We need to have a conversation another day on Trey McBride. That is a conversation for another day for those that are here. But there's some interesting
Cade
stuff.
Otton in a first.
Oh, yeesh.
Cade Otton in a first, yeah.
Give me. Yeah, throw on the shades after that one. Give me Evan Ingram in a second. Like, get me to that.
It.
You don't think so? You don't think you're getting Evan Ingram in a second at this point? Dang,
Kelsey's dead, man.
The fall from grace is the literal tight end one earlier this year. Literal tight end one earlier this year. Man, oh man. Hey, where you got Kelsey at? Is that best ball one? Do I need to come steal Kelsey off of you? Because
I'm not saying I'm doing all that. I'm not saying
Hey,
I'm
we got
doing
it
all
on
of that.
wax. We got
I
people in the building.
I
I got witnesses.
I already sold my Kelsey for Andrews.
Damn.
Already sold the Kelsey for Andrews.
Damn. All right.
Did that immediately.
But yeah, that's kind of what we'd be looking at here, Adam. So if you are in the building, we just ran through, check the timestamp around the 45-minute mark, 50-minute mark here. Ran through the redraft and superflex or dynasty side of this as well, so you can kind of check that out. If you're here and you have questions, drop them in chat here. We're going to get into some start sits, and then any of your questions to wrap things up. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Shimi coming in here with a question. Would y'all rather have Deshaun Watson or Caleb for B-Big?
We already put that one up.
Oh, whoops. That's my bad. Meant to click on this one here. And always interesting to hear about a guy who's never played an NFL snap. So between Watson and this is where you've always been to. You have a tough time when it comes to rookies
I'll have him 5 quarterbacks in my rankings lower than consensus.
Yep. Probably. You probably will. You'll probably have him in that.
He'll be quarterback 10 for me, and he'll be quarterback 5 on consensus.
Yep. And I do think that Caleb is a little bit of a different breed. I think when we're talking about quarterbacks, I think Drake May is one that you could argue could be in the top 10, or he could be QB 15 or 16, just depending on where he lands and where he goes. So I do think that the caliber of that kind of quarterback does matter. Yeah. So before we get into start sits, have a couple, one more question here we'll throw up and get this one going. But if you have any other questions, again, drop it in the chat here. We'll get to those as well. 12 team, 1 QB, start 9, half PPR, tanking dynasty. Love it. Shimi, thank you for throwing up the context. All right. So giving Garrett Wilson the 105 and 111, get Bijan. No running backs on this roster. You have Olave, Smitty, Addison. We'll stop there. Yeah, JMO is on the team, Dotson's on the team, but when
in a start 9, I'm not. No, you don't ever want to start those guys.
Those aren't starters. Like that's the tough thing. So start 9. Again, let's just put a quarterback, a tight end. So we've got 7 guys we got to fill. We have Olave, Smitty, Addison.
I mean, you're on the tank. I'm not giving up this much in a half PPR. I don't really value it that much differently than the 1 PPR to get into Bijan. Garrett Wilson's going to have better days ahead, and I think he gets right back into that wide receiver 10 range whenever Aaron Rodgers playing next year, and then whatever quarterback you guys beyond that. I don't really care, but I'm not giving up. I mean, you're talking Garrett Wilson and the 105. Even if it's 1 quarterback, you're going to have 4 wide receivers that are going to fill up that spot along with Brock Bowers. I mean, that'd be enough. And then you're also giving up the 111, which, in terms for us, we're probably looking at as like a mid-second for us. It's too much for me. I like Bijan, but I don't like him anywhere near that much to be giving up that much in a start 9. I get the tier up, and I get that you probably have to pay that much, but I'm fine. When you're on a tank team, I don't need the Bijan right now. I'll backfill with other running backs at those picks, and I'll build out a little bit of depth if I have to, because I'd rather get 2 running backs instead of Bijan probably. Yeah,
I'm pulling up. So I have a half PPR league that I just want to pull up and see where the difference is.
Interesting context. Already has Andrews tanking and Kyler Murray on the tank team.
Yeah. For sure. First of all, those are great assets to have for the future. So Bijan Robinson in a half PPR league right now is averaging 13.1 points per game. And I'm pretty sure Garrett Wilson has got to be in that same range. Olave's at 11.8. Addison's at 11.7. Yeah, like I'm just not doing it. Like even if
it's just too much for me to go into a running back as well that we're
9.
pretty against. I'd rather hold the higher tier asset that I believe Garrett Wilson is. If you're going to ask me, like, can I remove the 105? Then I have probably reason to do that. Like if you're going to ask me Garrett Wilson in the 111, I would do that for Bijan, but the 105 is where I get thrown off here.
I even think just looking at it this way, like you're going to have Kyler, Mark Andrews, those 2 spots locked up. You're going to have Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, like and Addison. Like Garrett Wilson has looked good. He's had moments, but he's had no quarterback. Like it should get better for him. We all, this is the same story we said coming into this year, that it's going to get better. Chris Olave should be healthy. I mean, I think you're better off taking these young assets into the offseason and selling on the hype of Olave coming into next year. Garrett Wilson, keeping him as a high end wide receiver, like the 105. What's that going to net you, like in a 1 QB league? Do you think Caleb goes top 5 in a 1 QB still?
No.
Okay.
No
I was gonna say, like, so
you're
you're gonna go
1 QB.
Marv. We're gonna go Malik. We're gonna go
Coleman, Odunze,
Bowers. Yeah. So there's 5. Like, you're gonna get one of those 5. Like, even if you get Bowers, you have an asset to trade. Like, unless if this is not a tight end premium, maybe you go after something else.
Even if it's not tight end premium, like
Xavier Worthy, you'll have other assets that I think are going to be like. I think you're going to have better hype. I do
Franklin,
think, Troy Franklin. This is a very
what Brian Thomas out of LSU as well, along with Neighbors. Like,
was it Xavier Leggett? Like, there's some names in this class that are going to be of interest. So the 105,
even if you want, like, is wide receiver heavy as we're going to be probably, and there's probably not going to be your first running back is probably going to go in Travion Henderson mid-second in the NFL draft, maybe.
And you have the locked in 102. Yeah, so you're getting Malik Neighbors most likely, or I mean, I guess I'd highly doubt you get Marv. But
honestly, once we start saying we have this many picks, I'm tearing up. Every one of these things. Like, we're trying to tier up. Okay, so I get where we're going here, right? Because we need to tier up. We've got too many assets for a start 9 to just sit here and sit complacent and draft all of these picks. What I'm not doing, I just don't have any care. Like, I'll play the NERB on a 53 game, and what I want to do is take all of these wide receivers and tier them up. Like, obviously the market might not exist, right? But I want to tier all of these up into Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, that, whatever I can do to get any of those 5, I'll send like 2 first along with any of these wide receivers that I already have right now, and I'll just get to those 5. That's what I want to do in the start 9. And I'll just play the NERB on a 53 on the running back position.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at exactly that, like, if you're giving up Garrett Wilson, the 105 and 111, I want a more solidified asset than Bijan. I like Bijan. I think he's very
more
good.
Solidified asset than Bijan. There's literally none in running back, but
not in running back. But like, I want it at the wide receiver position. Like you said, I would much rather use those types of assets to get the upgrade 5 first, so you feel good using it as a tier up. Yeah, that's exactly, especially in 1 QB. The one thing you're going to learn in 1 QB is, like, the 107 and beyond do not matter. Like, they're like, essentially, like, if you're thinking super flex, it's like a 2nd round pick, essentially. Maybe a back end first, 2nd round pick. So, like, if you're able to consolidate those and move up in the draft, move up in your tier ups in the assets, like, that's exactly what you do. I've never been a huge Chris Olave fan, so, like, that's the one. I mean, even Devonta Smith, like, we've seen Smitty, like, have flashes, but, like, you want a consistent wide receiver week in and week out.
Yeah, basically, I'm just trying this trade for I'm trying to trade for any of those 5 receivers that I've named off first. If none of those work, then by all means, like, go get Bijan. He's probably the most secure asset that you can get outside of those guys. But I'd try to go the receiver route first.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking too. 1 QB is always fun to deal with that. But yeah, this range, I like Garrett Wilson. Honestly, he'd be the one I'd probably try to trade out to. Like, could you move off of Olave or Smitty or Addison instead? Because I do believe in Garrett Wilson's talent and situation should improve. Whereas the rest
3 coming into the year, you remember that hype with Rodgers, wide receiver 3, and he was right up there with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Like, you only had to give like a 3rd or a 2nd to get to either one of those guys. That was wild times.
It was. I mean, that's the dynasty market, and Garrett Wilson will have a fluctuation again. Whereas, like, Devonta Smith, like, again, I'm a huge fan, NFL wise, talent wise, he's behind AJ Brown. Chris Olave could be the one there. I want to see what happens this offseason with that offense and with that coaching staff. But
they're safe. They're getting a pass.
It sucks, dude. That sucks so bad. Like, I want them gone in the worst way. But yeah, like, Olave needs to stay healthy and stay on the field, but we've seen flashes from him too. So yeah, I mean, you have good young pieces that people will want, and that's the great thing. So you are going to have the opportunity to pivot into win now pieces when that time comes. but that time is not right now. So look at other tier up opportunities that you have, and hit us up, dude. Like, you're in the if you're in the Discord, or if you have us on Twitter, follow us here. We'll drop this down in just a second. We'll drop your question down. Follow us on Twitter, like DM us or DM us on Discord, and we're happy to answer any questions you have or any trade possibilities to run through. Do it all the time, so don't hesitate to reach out to us there too.
Yep, love to see where that thing goes.
So, all right. If you have any other questions, drop them in here. We are going to do our start sits, and then we'll get to any other questions that you have at the end. But we do want to kind of hammer out some of this. I don't necessarily know if you want to go back and forth. We're gonna, we always look at this as, top 12 and top 24 at, top 12 at quarterback and tight end, top 24 at wide receiver and running back, which kind of sits we may want to consider just because of the either the matchups, situation going on with the team, things like that. And then same thing, flip it, anything outside of that range, looking at starts for potential pop weeks for our lineups. Especially if you're in deeper leagues. If you're in shallow leagues, it makes it a little bit tougher, but deeper leagues, or injury riddled teams, this is where you want to check in. So looking at the quarterbacks here, looking at the top 12, I mean, anyone that stands out to you that you're interested in sitting in the top 12 right now?
As soon as I go through the list, I mean, I love myself some CJ Stroud, but against this Denver defense that's been playing much better, I don't think he should be all the way up at number 3. Maybe that's just a little bit of my pessimistic fan bias coming in, but it feels wild to have him up at number 3 on a week. But the one that I think I'm going to look at here first, as much as I've been hyping him up all night and all week, Sam Howell against the Miami defense has been playing much better over the last couple of weeks. That's probably going to be one that I'm looking to sit right now. Jalen Ramsey there, along with a much improved defense throughout the year. I do think that this team, as much as we want to rely on their passing offense and passing prowess and how good they are on offense, honestly, they've been scoring around like 20 points, I believe, over the past couple of weeks, and their defense has been the one that's winning them games, kind of like the Chiefs have been over the course of this year, where their offense isn't all that great, but the defense is winning them games. The Miami Dolphins have kind of shifted to that here as of late. So I believe in this Miami Dolphins defense, and Sam Howell against them, he's going to have to rely on running here. I don't believe through the air that he's going to provide much. So Sam Howell would be one I'd be looking to sit out of the top 12.
The utter disrespect to my Broncos. We have a rivalry matchup between. Well, not only are we playing in Rumble, where we're both undefeated. Technically, you lost. I think did you lose a head to head? I think you lost.
I lost a median.
Yeah, so like we have that head to head matchup. We have the Texans and the Broncos going off this week. Like, we got some beef this week, man. And yeah, like, as a Broncos fan, don't get me wrong, like, this team started off flat, like, it was not good, but this defense has been
70 points against Miami those days. It's come a long way from then.
The number one scoring defense over the past, I think, 6 or 7 weeks. It's looked a lot better. And I do think CJ Stroud being number 3 is a bit disrespectful. I you know what? Let me go hit up some Denver defense players on Twitter and just let them know what the fantasy community is looking at. So anyways, that would be an interesting one. I do think he's going to fall short, but I actually think Kyler Murray against Pittsburgh is kind of a rough matchup. The Cardinals are just not good. I mean, there's really not. I mean, that's really kind of the way you got to look at it. Pittsburgh's going to have a good enough defense. They're going to get pressure on him with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Like, they're going to get some pressure on him. They have a good secondary and linebacker core that I think can slow some stuff down on this offense. And I just don't think Kyler's going to have a great week. Truly, I think he's going to get saved by a rushing touchdown. But if he doesn't get that rushing touchdown that he's had in 3 straight weeks now, I don't think you're going to have a very good production out of Kyler, like maybe 12 points. Like, that's kind of what you're looking at. And it's just, like, out of the QB position. So that's probably my sit for this week.
Yeah, give me that rushing floor with Kyler. I'll still play him over the Sam Howell rushing floor, but I do think that those are kind of similar, right? So
yeah,
I think they are kind of similar players going into this week. As we're going to the other side of this thing, looking for some starts outside of the top 12. The first one, I don't know why Derek Carr is number 14 on the week. This man has Lynn Bowden, A.T. Perry, and Keith Kirkwood as his starting wide receivers.
Yeah.
Good thing Alvin Kamara might catch 16 passes this week.
for
but
27 yards.
yeah, it's probably not going to go for much, but fire up those Alvin Kamara shares. We might get to him in the next segment. He's going to be in the top. I hope he's in the top 12, or we go to 24 whenever we get to running back. But
Yeah,
start up your Alvin Kamaras. The wide receiver core is absolutely decimated unless Olave is able to come back off of his concussion, which it doesn't sound like he's going to be able to. So it just caught my eye here with that Derek Carr one. Anybody else you're looking to start here outside of that top 12? I mean, Jake Browning's QB 16 on the week, man.
Oh, baby. You want to know who I'm starting? A Matt Canada Liss. Kenny Pickett, baby. We're gonna ride the Kenny Pickett offense.
We're
I'm
going
gonna
sit
hope
Kyler Murray and start Kenny Pickett
man,
on the other side.
we know how this works. We know how this works, and it's worked really well with our start sits. So I'm rocking the opposite side here. I think Kenny Pickett has looked serviceable. I'm not going to go as ballsy to say he's going to have his first 3 touchdown game, but like I'd love to see that. I think it would be his first 3 touchdown. I don't know if he's actually had one of those, but he's been a perennial 1 TD guy, and so I would love to see multiple touchdowns from Kenny Pickett. Let's get a bootleg rush into the end zone too against the Cards. Like I think this Pittsburgh offense will actually thrive this week. So I'm not expecting big things, but you know what? Let's get a couple tutties, get an 18 to 20 point game out of some Kenny Pickett here.
That's fair. I'm going to jump down here to this Dak Prescott all the way down. No, we're not going to do that.
for those watching, yeah,
ESPN
like
ranks. ESPN ranks are god awful for Thursday night games because half the players or half the people don't rank them, and they end up all the way down here. Like some people rank him as the number 1 quarterback on the week, and then the no rank puts him at number 19. It's a fantastic system that they use. But no, I'm gonna go to Gardner Minshew actually against Tennessee defense that has been pretty suspect through the air. Could be a little bit lower scoring game with a interdivisional matchup, right? But really the only other people that I'm looking at here after you've already taken the Kenny Pickett off the board. I mean, Will Levis on the other side, I'm not really excited about. Matthew Stafford against Cleveland, no. Bailey Zappi to start, hell no. Bryce Young ever, no. Like there ain't much else. So I'm gonna have to go with Gardner here because he's about the last one remaining that I'd actually start.
Yep, I feel that too. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So let's jump into running back here and look at some running back sits since we're hitting here, getting close to that lovely hour and a half mark.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's get things rolling. All right. So sits on the running back side. The one that stood out to me I usually like to look for those checking in on this for the first time. I like to look at the top 12 and top 24 separately, even though these are both going to be sits. In the top 12, like the name that stands out right away is Kyren Williams against Cleveland. I know he's going to get the volume, which is going to be great for him. That's a very good Cleveland defense. That is a very good Cleveland defense. I think you're going to have some limited Kyren opportunities here, or as far as limited Kyren production. So if you have other options to start other than Kyren, I would be interested in seeing, at least hearing out what those options are. For the most part, you probably have to, but don't be surprised if he clunks for you this week.
Yeah, anytime you're starting anybody against Cleveland, it doesn't feel great. So I have actually sat a Kyren Williams in one of my redraft leagues that I have him in. Accidentally left him on IR the last week, so I didn't get that 34 point week or whatever it was. That was fun. Yep, that was fun sitting on my bench. Took a loss because of it too. That was really fun. Learning experience day. Don't do that. Make sure you check in on your home leagues, guys. But a little bit more focused on those dynasty leagues this time of year. But we've already locked up a playoff spot there, so we're all good. Kyren Williams, though, I do believe tough matchup against Cleveland, so I'm going to go down the board a little bit. Man, a lot of good ones here. I'm going to go into. I don't like it, but I'm going to go Derrick Henry against Indy, man. It just hasn't been good for old King Henry, right? It is in Yeti season. The Derrick Henry Yeti season is upon us. It is getting to that December time, but we're not quite there yet. It will be there by the time he plays, though, so maybe he makes the transition. I'm going to bet against it, though. We've seen Tyjae Spears and him splitting work. He's been rushing for like 10 rushes for 30 yards almost week over week here as of recent. It's been disgusting. So you're going to put Derrick Henry in the top 24 here. I'm going to sit him.
Yeah, we're reaching a point in the season where the Titans are going to be making some choices about looking at the future. And unfortunately for Derrick Henry owners, me being one of them in a lot of places, there's a good shot we're going to see a lot more Tyjae Spears. The volume just hasn't been there, and he's going to need the touches. However, these divisional games are the ones that he usually smashes in. So he stood out to me too. That was definitely one that I immediately looked at. And I was like, man, just thinking about my matchups this week, I'm like, that's not so promising. So yeah, that's one of concern. As we get down here into the bottom half of this 24, there's a few names that, I mean, Aaron Jones, if he's
Cheap
healthy and
shot, like,
playing,
right? Like, I honestly don't think he plays, so a little
yeah,
bit of a
like
cheap shot.
and that's why I'm just pointing out some names here, but like, yeah, Aaron Jones is one. Like, I don't feel great if I have to start him, but there's a couple places I have to start him.
I'll throw out Joe Mixon too against Jacksonville. I'm not really excited about that one.
I just think Mixon's just going to keep getting that volume.
I mean, he has all the
Javonte,
volume in the world, but it's still Jake Browning against the Jacksonville defense. I'm like,
ugh,
as I'm trying to find names here, that's one that stuck out to me.
just gag. Yeah, I mean, there's Javonte. I do think Pacheco might be a good actual start option this week. They seem to be, running the rock a little bit more. Javonte does concern me a little bit with Houston, just because Denver does rotate running backs frequently, and I do think that if Denver is going to beat Houston, that's going to be through the air. So that's one that might be of interest as a sit. So if you have other options for other than Javonte, that would be one that I'd be interested in checking out too. But anyone else stand out to you?
You get a little bit more Jaleel and P. Ryan in there, and it doesn't turn into more than 12, 15 touches for Javonte. And what does he do with them? If it's only 60 yards, I could see him being a little bit of a bust candidate this week.
Yep, exactly. Anyone else stand out to you in this, or should we get into some of the starts? I mean, it's gonna be tough for some starts this week, like outside the top 24.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it ever, but Raheem Mostert, if A-Chain is actually back and fully healthy, that'd be the only one. But he's playing against Washington. There's no chance I'm sitting him. So
yeah,
not doing that.
Yeah, so looking outside the top 24, few names stand out. I mean, Jerome Ford against the Rams, Devin Singletary. There's some decent names actually. Like if you're streaming running backs, I am curious with you real quick here. I know Dameon Pierce is healthy. It sounds like he's been practicing.
Well, he played last week. Didn't play much, but played last week.
Yeah. So, but it seems like he's healthy. Like he's out there. Like I'm curious if he was like just one of those like, hey, just in case Singletary does get banged up, like be ready kind of thing.
He took like 6 carries last week. So
it just
I
seems
mean,
like
it
was weird, man.
I think you're more on the right track. I've been telling you that Dingleberry, as I like to call him, is a garbage poo poo, and he's very bad at the football. I still believe that. I believe if Dameon Pierce was running behind the offensive line that Devin Singletary was running behind the last 3 weeks, it'd be a lot different story. But unfortunately, that's not the reality that we've been living with for the last 12 weeks now. Hopefully week 13. Unfortunately, Larry Tunsil going on IR for the rest of the year is not very helpful to this offensive line. So I don't think this gets very much better. It's not. I don't think it's better for either of them. So I think they're going. I think it's going to go into more of a. It's going into a 50-50 workload timeshare between the two of them, because Singletary's proven at least a little bit to deserve touches, and I don't think either of them are good. Where is Singletary actually in the rankings? Can I sit Singletary? No, he's at 26. I don't want to start either of them though if I have other options.
Yeah, I already forgot that they're playing Denver. So yeah, not really wanting to do that either. Chuba Hubbard against Tampa, tough matchup. I mean, Jerome Ford's truly the only one, just because the volume potential is going to be there of him actually getting touches.
AJ Dillon, along with Aaron Jones, is probably missing. As much as I know right now, that I'm working on that assumption. So AJ Dillon being outside of the top 35 here, or 30 here, 33. AJ Dillon's one that I'd be, obviously you're never happy to really start AJ Dillon, but you can throw him in if he's the only one there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump into wide receivers here and then get into tight ends. So wide receivers, start sits. So the top 24, looking at this again, man, oh man, like Tank Dell at number 7. Like they're just out here thinking CJ Stroud and Tank Dell are just going to absolutely torch this Denver
Because
secondary.
they have been for the last 4 weeks straight.
Ooh, baby. Like this is I can't wait to watch that game. I can't. Like no one else is going to care about, two borderline playoff teams that are probably just, probably don't need to make the
Hey,
playoffs,
they're
but hey,
they're come on. There's a new America's team in Texas, baby.
yeah,
Everybody loves
right.
the CJ Stroud.
I mean, everyone loves CJ Stroud, but not a new team. That's you're getting wild here. Sits Chris Olave. I mean, if it sounds like I, hey man, if
I
he's
mean,
out there, I don't want to put him on the field. Let me just put it
no.
that way. If he did practice in a limited capacity today, so if he does clear concussion protocol, he's been a sit for me a lot this year. It's been good. So that's kind of why Olave is like the one I'm interested in selling in dynasty or even in redraft leagues. But
If he's somehow able to suit up, though, again, what I went back to earlier, his other wide receivers on the field with him are Lynn Bowden, A.T. Perry, and Keith Kirkwood.
he's just going to get doubled. It's legit going to be an Alvin Kamara game. Like,
It's going to be Alvin Kamara.
anyone stand out to you in the top 24 for a sit this week?
Every time you see Jamar Chase with Jake Browning up there, you gotta put that up there. Garrett Wilson with Tim Boyle, same exact thing. Then I go into Adam Thielen. He had a very good first half of the season. He hasn't done hardly anything past that. And you have the you have the Tampa Bay defense. Actually, that's a little bit better. I probably wouldn't sit in. I probably wouldn't sit in going into that matchup. So the two that it's Garrett Wilson for me. I'm still going to start Jamar Chase with Jake Browning, but Garrett Wilson, I'll still sit. And I've been doing it every single time that Aaron Rodgers did. Like you've been sitting Chris Olave every time. I've been sitting Garrett Wilson every time.
Yep. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. Looking at the bottom half here of the top 24, Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, going up against Cleveland. Don't feel great about either of them. It's just going to be rough. It's just going to be rough sledding for this team right now. Cooper Kupp didn't look fully healthy last week. I mean, he only had 5 targets. Kupp is one I'm kind of passing on. If you have other reasonable options, go for it. And we've seen kind of the Puka regression back to the mean, which is what we've expected from that high end value. If you sold Puka after those first few weeks, I think you're very happy with that return that you got. So, I think I'm just kind of avoiding that team right now.
I sent out a bunch of offers that got declined. DJ Moore straight up, Christian Watson straight up, Michael Pittman straight up, and a bunch of all of those guys for Puka. All of them declined. They were just trash offers at the time. I think they're probably all about the same guy, honestly. I don't value any of them all that differently. So that's just an interesting one going forward. If you want to just rely on the stack of where I'm saying that the Sam Howell pick might be a little bit of a sit, Terry McLaurin here against the Miami Dolphins defense, which is probably where I would go if we were just picking this as like an actual game like we were used to do. I'd probably stack that with Terry McLaurin going against Jalen Ramsey on the outside. Probably a stay away game for me on McLaurin.
Yep, that's pretty fair. Looking at the flip side, looking at some starts outside the top 25, I keep wanting to put Hollywood up there. Deontay Johnson. You want to talk about stacks? We're going to stack my guy Deontay with if he's healthy, with Kenny Pickett, because I do think that they'll have a good game. He had 8 targets last week. It wasn't the prettiest performance against the Bengals, but I do think that this Cardinal secondary is going to get sliced up. So let's see a nice 12 target game for Deontay Johnson. Let's just let Kenny Pickett chuck the rock, baby.
I don't think they've ever let him do that, but new offense. Let's see if it happens. I don't know if it'll happen against Arizona.
I'm getting a little greedy. I'm getting
a little bit out over your skis, I think. But man, Curtis Samuel all the way up here at 30. Is Dotson out?
Curtis Samuel gets his love, man. He's actually had some fantasy. Everyone ragged on me for holding him in Rumble, man. Like it's like, why you should just drop him. I think he's cracked my lineup. Like
Curtis Samuel is higher than Jahan Dotson in rankings.
Love it.
Is Dotson hurt? Like I'm actually just purely curious about this one. I can't see the logic or the reasoning for having him above him, but that interesting to me. I'd rather play Dotson than Samuel, even though he has had a little bit more targets. I think that Dotson has the bigger play upside ability. So just an interesting one to me. I don't even really want to start either of them as much as I was saying, we're still on the Washington defense that I said, or Washington offense that I said I still don't really want to play all that much. But going through here, the first one that stuck out to me was going to be I'm gonna lean into it. I'm gonna lean into the Jordan Love being a little bit better than we all thought for a little while. I'm actually gonna go not with Christian Watson. I'm gonna go with Jaden Reed. I'm gonna go with
Yep.
Jaden Reed as my start of the week here at the wide receiver outside that top 24.
Yeah, he did not practice on Thursday, which is concerning for
Well, that
him. I
is
think.
unfortunate. Hopefully, he logs a hopefully he logs a
Yeah,
practice on the next day. If whichever one of those two,
yeah,
if there's one of them that's missing, obviously this wide receiver core has been banged up all year, and it just seems to be kind of a wide receiver by committee approach with Dontavian Wicks even starting in there. Malik Heath even got some action out of Ole Miss.
yeah,
The
man.
other wide receiver other than Mingo out of Ole Miss, Malik Heath got some runs. So whichever wide receiver is the one here between Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, that's the one that I really want to start this week.
Yep, I totally agree with you there. Sounds like T. Higgins is also a potential out, or sorry, he's potentially going to be back this week.
He's playing, yeah.
Yeah,
He
so
basically said today he's playing.
the big issue again is who is throwing him the football. So that's why he's down here. I just doesn't feel great putting him in the lineup. I kind of want to lean on Rashee Rice. I know he's had some ups and downs this year, but it just feels like a game where Rashee Rice is going to have an opportunity to get into the end zone again. He got 10 targets last week. If they're going to feed him, I want to see what he can do in this offense. They need a true number one or someone to step into that role. He stepped into it last week with his first 100-yard game. Maybe we can see a back-to-back performance against the Green Bay Packers. That will be dependent on. I think Jair's out, so I think I'm good rolling that out there. So Rashee Rice start for the wide receivers, and then let's get into tight ends here.
I'll start Justin Watson over Rashee Rice this week, and if you really want to get spicy, my last leading target earner of KC last week. I do believe that Justin Watson, as gross as it might be their wide receiver one.
Did he really lead in targets? Because I mean, Rashee Rice had 11 targets.
Okay, well, maybe it's not last week. I might be misspeaking a little bit. But if you want one more, I'm going to go with Noah Brown just for you because we've had some conversations about Noah Brown here over the past 12 hours or so.
If anyone wants to stick around for that trade, we will talk about that trade now that you brought it up here. So let's get into tight ends here real quick because I do want to dive into that. So top 12 sits for the tight end position. Just kind of looking at this really quickly here because you just got me going. Okay. Anyone stand out to you right off the rip? Is this a Kittle sit week? It sounds like this is going to be a smash week for him.
I'm actually benching a Kittle share in favor of the guy that's lower, Taysom Hill. Although both of them are top 12, I do just think that like Taysom Hill could actually get some receiving work with how decimated that receiving core is, and with the rushing aspect that he holds, and a potential quarterback, like he could do all three in this game. So I think they might rely on him. I do like me some Taysom Hill, but he's inside the top 12, so I will go with actually. Interestingly enough, I'm gonna go against your start of the quarterback. I'm gonna go against your start quarterback of the week. Arizona's been pretty good against tight end this year.
Finally,
regardless, 7 years of historical data saying that Arizona is garbage and the worst in the league against tight end has been flipped on its head a little bit this year. I think they're actually in the top half. I'll go with a Pat Freiermuth. They were hyper focusing him in this last game with this new offense that they rolled out onto the field. So maybe Arizona has a little bit of a defensive strategic standpoint to try to limit some Pat Freiermuth, and it would actually lean into a little bit of your take with Deontay Johnson being the one. So I'll lean in with you there. I'm going to go against Pat Freiermuth here as the tight end 12 to sit.
The one that I'm also looking at here, he was one that I was definitely looking at. I do want to see. I know Dalton Schultz being top 12. I get it because if he's healthy, there's that possibility. I know he was sidelined with his hamstring injury. I'm not sure. We'll see what kind of limited fashion he practices in, but he has had, I mean, he got saved by a touchdown against Arizona, but the last few weeks have not been pretty for him and his production ever since his, 10 catch, 130-yard touchdown game. So, just a little bit concerned about that. So if he is on the field, I don't want to have to start Dalton Schultz. In fact, that reminds me, I have him sitting in my starting lineup in a place, so I should go remove that immediately. And knowing myself, I will forget. So after this, remind me to go bench Dalton Schultz. But yeah, so that's, I think, would be my bench. That you hit on the one that I was going to look at. So let's look at some starts outside the top 12 real quick here. Anyone of interest for you outside here? Tyler Conklin against Atlanta stands out to me. Tyler Conklin's just been, a safety blanket, I guess, for anyone that decides to throw the ball for that team.
He's been good, but they've also been running Ruckert out there because they've been trying to do this youth movement. So they're like splitting snaps here over the last couple of weeks.
I mean, he's young for a tight end. He's only 27, 28. Like, I mean,
he's got Ruckert's a sophomore.
Yeah. But Conklin's still getting the targets. Like, it's still his.
Otten's the one here for me. Otten's definitely the one here for me.
Yeah.
It's a little bit cheap, but tight end 14 outside of the top 12, but he's by far and away the one that I want to start.
Yeah, that's fair. I think this is also probably a Jonnu Smith due game. Like, he had back-to-back weeks of last week. He didn't get even targeted. A week before he had 3 targets, 1 catch, 1 yard. He is due. That dude is just absolutely due. So if you need a bye week start, that's the one I'm looking at too. So that wraps up starts and sits here, kind of giving you some context on that. If you have any questions about your lineups or your start sit questions, hit us up. Hit us up in Discord. Make sure you are part of the Destination Devy community, destinationdevy.com. Have to check that out. Hands down the best place to be for your fantasy success long term. And that's redraft, dynasty, Devy leagues. We do it all in there. Got to be a part of that community.
Relationship advice.
It's all in there.
Food, smoking meats advice. Yep. That's in there too.
Whole channel just smoked foods. Like, it's just constantly in there. Yeah, it's fun place to be, man.
Trash trade offers. Actually, as I'm wearing it, Process Over Players DTI 5 hoodie that they gave me. Shout out to those guys. So make sure you don't only in the Destination Devy Discord, the DTI 5 Discord as well, that you can get access to both of those at the same time. We're all housed in the same channel right now. And then check out their YouTube and stuff. Obviously, if you're watching us, you know where DTI 5 is and you know where Destination Devy is. So definitely do those things, though, and tap into everything we're doing over there. We're in all of those literally all the time as well. So great to be partnered with all of those guys. But let's do it, Chase. We've been talking about this one before we jumped on. Before the Thursday night football game started off, this is my league. This is our Premier League. Chase and I are... Oh, come on. You do have the belt behind you, but it is not your league, okay? This is our Premier League.
This is my league.
This is our Premier League. It is the second year of the league. Chase does not run this thing. However, he is running it again, back-to-back years. He is the top team in the league. I, after not making the playoffs last year, have turned my team into the second-place team in the league. It is a 28 team, 14 teams on each side to copy Dynasty Best Ball League. Start 11, Superflex, tight end premium, PPC, a bunch of stuff that doesn't actually matter more than what we're talking about right here. But I need something to build out the rest of my roster for the rest of the year. And I've got 3 players on IR, or 3 players who were on IR. I've got Daniel Jones, Darren Waller, and Zach Ertz, who might actually be going to a contender and playing. Yeah. So we're going to leave him out. But basically, I have no picks left. We only have 1 year of picks. We only have 24 picks. And I've got Daniel Jones and Darren Waller are pretty much my only liquid assets to make a move. I've got a little bit of youth built up on this team, a lot more than Chase does, but he's a better team than me. We're on the same side of the conferences, and I'm thinking about taking this deal of Daniel Jones for Ty Chandler and Noah Brown. Now it's a sell, though. It's a sell at the rock bottom of Daniel Jones' price. I know it. Chase, talk me out of it as a non-biased. Obviously, we're competing in this. Talk me out of why I should not do this deal, because I'm thinking about doing it.
I mean, I think you talked yourself out of it earlier in this show when you said you would not sell a quarterback for a second round pick. And I know Daniel Jones's value is rock bottom. Well, hear me out. I know you want to go off on me right now. Ty Chandler,
I
Noah
just saw a
Brown.
trade completed in another league. I'm sorry.
Okay, you're good. We need is it something I need to be aware of too? Because I
No,
am curious.
you're
Okay,
good.
good, perfect. So Noah Brown and Ty Chandler maybe combined worth a second. Is that 2/3? That's probably 2/3 right there for Daniel Jones.
2/3. I'd say it's 2/3.
And I get the whole depth argument. And for me, when you look at your team and like if you want to pull your actual team up here while we talk this through, so you can see it's Noah Brown, Ty Chandler for Daniel Jones. So Noah Brown, Ty Chandler for Daniel Jones. And when you look at his team, I mean, last year he was a tank team. He turned it around, incredible comeback for what he's done. When you best ball format, so again, keep that in mind. When he has Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, so he has three guys there outside of Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones might be his best quarterback. It's possible, but he also has Austin Eckler, Brees Hall, Khalil Herbert. We'll skip some of those names. Zach Moss is getting back into the rotation. Bijan Robinson, Kyron Williams. You do have Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Like you can see Amon Ra, and then you have some decent tight end depth there. What for me really stands out is like you have four quarterbacks with Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones is going to give you a piece for the future. I know there's a concern, or not even concern. There's a good chance that he is not starting for the first like month of the year, maybe even longer. But if you have four quarterbacks in a league like this, you have trade assets outside of this. For me, when you look at this team, and if you want to pull my team up, feel free. Noah Brown and Ty Chandler are not the difference between this beating me. And I think that's the whole thing is like you in order for you to make, you have to make the championship to truly get a chunk of money. Like you get like $50 if you get second place on your side, but you can get $1,000 if if you end up getting it to the championship, win or lose the championship. But you got to get there, and you have to go through me to get there. And again, that's like the bias side of me saying this. But when I look at your roster and like long term, like what next year this could be, I just don't think Noah Brown and Ty Chandler are the pieces that you need to succeed this year. And I think that Daniel Jones could be a piece for the future that one could net you more value, but also could be a big difference maker in your quarterback room if it gives you four quarterbacks or gives you quarterback flexibility to move one of those guys.
And so regardless of your roster, like honestly, this move is not regarding your roster. This move is not one to it is a move to try to get me more points this year, but it is not to try to beat your roster. I don't think I'm looking at it in exactly that way. There is a part of me that like I'm looking at Daniel Jones and I'm starting to see that knife fall where he just goes to zero. And this is at least a little bit of value. I mean, we saw damn Kenny Pickett traded for 2/3 in this league, and that's an actual starting quarterback that's going for the rest of the year, right?
Wrong. But like
I know like that's a little bit of a different story. But yeah, so
sorry, Brandon.
where I'm going to with this one though is like you're saying like what like we're going to next year and we're saying, hey, he's probably that pup candidate. He's probably on that like almost Kyler Murray timeline, right? Where he's missing the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season. Mm-hmm. And what is their replacement at quarterback? Now he is going to be on the team. I have I have concern that he's not going to be anything of their future going forward. Like they have him for next year and they're out of that contract. That contract was not built to be more than a 2-year contract. If they have something that they can get through next year with, and they have something that shows out in those first 6 games of the year, why do they have any reason to go back to Daniel Jones after he literally just failed them for an entire year? Regardless of if it's his fault or not, I don't think it was. There's no offensive line. They put 8 slot receivers around him and Darren Waller, and they expected him to win. It wasn't anything like the 2022 season was whenever he gave us all of that hope, but I'm a little bit concerned about this knife falling out from under him and just the value of him going to zero. And that's more of where I'm looking at this Daniel Jones piece of like, hey, can do me a little bit now, and it might be enough if I get a couple of pop weeks in the right weeks to get me to a semifinals, to get me to a finals in this league, and I'm out of the Daniel Jones that I don't really want to be carrying anymore.
So said a few things there that I want to kind of hit on. So you did say it's a move that's not necessarily to beat my roster, which I can appreciate. It's more or less to get out on Daniel Jones while you can. And I just don't think that trade offer right there is a trade that you can't get done at any point in time. I think that is rock
I've
bottom.
I've tried with 27 different offers over the last 3 weeks to try to get something similar.
And that's interesting to hear. I mean, and like you said, it's rock bottom.
I will say that one specifically, I don't actually believe that was the offer that was sent out. It was the counter that was given back, but I've sent out similar offers to that. More so, I believe that one was like a for the Waller, and it was Waller, and I want to say it was like a Samaje Perine or something. Samaje Perine basically for the Ty Chandler, and then Waller for the Noah Brown or something like that. And obviously there you're looking at like, yeah, that's something.
I mean, I think,
but obviously you're not doing that on the tank team because you're getting two older assets that aren't helping you right now. And that's where the team is a little bit stagnant of like, unless I'm trading something that's really high caliber, I'm not getting those other depth pieces that I'm trying to fill out the back of the roster with.
So I can get the justification there then. So I can get that when you're talking about Waller though, like again, older tight end with injury issues, really? That's a legit one that like is close to getting to zero. And this is probably as close as it's going to get until it hits zero. So I do get like the rejection there as far as that goes, but I see why you would construct that way. The thing that comes back to Daniel Jones for me is you said like this contract is not built for long term. I know we're in short dynasty windows, right? Assuming he starts half the year, like even if he starts half the year next year, and let's say he's not back in New York, there will be a team that takes the shot on Daniel Jones because of the argument that you just said, where it's probably not his fault. It was the offensive line. When the offensive line was good, even with no weapons, he was a top 12 dynasty quarterback, fantasy quarterback. He had that opportunity. So if he can choose his destination and it can be anywhere better that has an offensive line or weapons, like the dude's not going to be a starter.
But he's not choosing his destination until minimum 2024. Like my concern is he's a backup for all of 2023. Like that is my true concern.
24. Yeah, 20. Yeah. I'm with you.
And I'm not holding him on this on Rumble. I'm not holding Daniel Jones all the way through 2023 if he's not a starter. Like there's no chance that that's happening.
You held Zach Ertz in Rumble for a full year too
on IR.
But you can hold Daniel Jones on.
Zach Ertz was playing until Zach Ertz was playing and producing until he went on IR in Rumble.
And Daniel Jones will be on IR until he's playing. Like that is it. Like they're not going to just bring him off of IR to sit on the bench. He may. I mean, like worst case, he sits on IR all season.
Does he come back to play?
Yeah.
Man. What if they draft quarterback? They
might in the second round, in the third round, in the fourth round.
Why would they do that though if that's not their long-term future? Like that's where like they literally draft a top 3 in the first 3 rounds. They draft a quarterback next year. Daniel Jones is dead.
No, he's not.
Yeah,
and that's why
he's dead for 2023. You're not drafting a quarterback in the top 3 rounds if he's not your quarterback for all of that year.
I mean, Kyle Trask. I mean, there's lots of second round QBs that get drafted that don't go there. Like my only fear, like he has to make it out of the first round. If they make it out of the first round, like if Dayball is like, man, my job is riding on the line here, I gotta draft a quarterback of the future. Like that would be the problem. But I don't think the Giants are going to be 1 in a position to do that, or 2 willing to take that gamble. And so that's kind of where I think you and I differ on this. And again, this is your team. You do your thing. We just like to talk trades out. This is for everyone to kind of see and kind of talk trades out. I just think that's where my struggle is like, I think you can get that deal done at any time, and I just don't think that those are the pieces that are going to be the difference. Whereas like Daniel Jones could get you into a situation where you can net more, or at least net you that same exact return this offseason in pick value, which I'd much rather have the picks than Ty Chandler and Noah Brown. And and that's probably the differing
I
factor
don't give a
between the two of
fuck
us.
about the picks.
I know you don't.
Could
I
not
know
give
you
a
don't.
fuck less about the picks. Like
It's all about
what the fuck is a back end second and a third or a 2/3 going to do to this roster right now? Absolutely nothing.
It's
Gonna
Brown.
it's
Gets you
gonna
Ty
I mean Noah
Chandler.
Brown and Ty Chandler next year. Like, right? Like, why would I not just spend that right now? Where my team's actually in a position, regardless of what your team is. My team is in second damn place. Like, it just takes 1 week, and that's where I'm at. Like, I would rather push those chips in now than just say, hey, you know, like because of one asset, I might be held up to not go in this year.
I mean,
the one asset on my team that I need to re-roll with, the one asset that I'm not comfortable with personally. Like, why am I going to hold anything back on this roster when I'm in second place in the entire league? Not even just in our side of 14. I'm in second place on everybody out of 28 teams. I do have to run through you, and you've got a fucking juggernaut. I will admit that. But like, if not now, when? There's a plethora of things that can go wrong to never get me back to this point again in this league.
I want you to know that my brain immediately went to, can I send you a Noah Brown and Ty Chandler to get Daniel Jones from you? Like, that is literally where my brain is at right this moment. Like, and that's all I can think. I just literally pulled my team up. Like, well, if you're going to sell for that and I'm interested at that price, why not?
Let's pull you up. Let's pull you up.
For those that stuck around, thank you. Dynasty Daddy in the building. Appreciate you for stopping by. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you. If you have questions, hit us up. We're going to wrap up here in the next few minutes here. We've gone way longer than we anticipated.
For sure.
We went off on some tangents. All wrestlers theme here. So this is my 25 right here. Man, what could I give up?
Carr, Geno, Russ, Gus, Clyde, Deonta Foreman, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, probably going to catch 16 balls this week. Mostert, Singletary, Warren, Williams. What? Damn, Williams is freaking dead, man. I don't even want that. Like, that's
I was trying so hard to sell in this offseason. I just couldn't. No one wanted him.
That is dead asset. If you want to talk about dead assets, Jeff Wilson's probably dead unless Mostert or A-Chain take another injury. Yeah. Allen Diggs, Tyreek Lockett, Palmer, Ridley, Curtis Samuel, JSN, Conklin, Ingram, Gerald, Everett. 14. You've got the running back horses over me. Like, you've got the running back depth over me. And then you've got the Keenan Allen, Diggs, Tyreek. Like, that's the difference in our teams right now. You've got the high-end wide receiver that's currently producing, and you've got a little bit more running back depth than me. That's truthfully where, because our quarterback rooms both have Geno, both have Carr. You have Russ
versus Baker,
and I have Baker.
So it's Russ versus Baker. You have Bijan and Brees, which will be a difference, you know, than we have different running backs, which there's no crossover. Yeah, I got the wide receiver build on you. Got Tyree 2K. Yeah, I mean, and I'm gonna go, just so you know, if Zach Ertz signs with the team, I'm gonna go buy Zach Ertz. So like, I'm just gonna cancel that out, just so you're aware. Like, that's the plan.
You don't have any picks either. What are you buying with?
I got an early 4th, and I think that might be enough to get Zach Ertz.
4th and Jamal Williams.
Not even just that 4th. It's Brett's 4th. He's just gonna ship that puppy out there and go get my Zach Ertz back that I dropped off in free agency this offseason.
If you want it.
I thought about it. That's actually the trade that I'm looking at doing this week. So I have to do it now. Actually, I do.
Legitimately, because if he goes to if he goes to Philly or if he goes to Baltimore, you're not getting him for a 4th anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, depending upon what team he's on, because he's still probably dead after the year.
Let's find that. So yeah. So I mean, that's the whole thing. Is like, when I look at that, like, I don't know, man. Like, I just don't think Noah Brown does anything to tickle the fancy, so to speak. But
It's fair, but I'm also high. I'm also probably much higher on Noah Brown than a lot of people are. Like
I know. And I think it's the homer.
I still look at no, it's not even homer. It's more of like the pessimistic homer of like I still don't believe in Tank Dell somehow. Like I'm finally getting on board, but like I mean, whenever Noah Brown's been playing, Noah Brown's had as many good games as Tank Dell has. So
Yeah. All right.
there's that.
Any other questions here? We got to wrap out of here. I've
We
gone way longer than
I
ever
mean, yeah, it's
anticipated.
turning on 1 here, and we got to wake up for work in the morning. So we probably got to jump off of this one.
Yes,
We'll
we
see.
do.
Maybe this trade will be accepted whenever we wake up in the morning, and we can post it on the old X Factor at Cody Smith TFDR. Follow along to see if that one's accepted. It probably won't be accepted in the morning, but maybe by the end of the workday, I'll have enough of enough BS that goes on, and I'll just be like, whatever. Let's just send her all in. We'll sell off dimes for 2 pieces that are probably maybe they never even hit my lineup, but at least we tried.
At least we tried. All right. Well, good stuff tonight. Had a lot of fun. Good conversations here. Again, if you're still around with us, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below at this point. Let us know some of your questions. Find us on X. You can follow us at Cody Smith TFDR, at Trophy Chase TFDR. Let us know any of your questions. Hit us up in DMs. We get questions all the time. Start sits, trade questions, things like that. Happy to help break things down. Do some roster questions, things like that too. For the off season, we grind all the time. You can find us on Destination Devy Radio. We drop every Tuesday for the Overreaction podcast. And then make sure you are part of Destination Devy community, destinationdevy.com. You can join the DTI 5 and Heisman combo tier, and you have access to all the content creators all day, every day. There's a voice chat. You can chop it up with Ray, Scott, me, Cody. I mean, anyone and everyone. There's so many content creators or any of the writers, Brandon. You get our Devy guys involved in there too, as far as their conversation and content. So incredible stuff going on there. It is hands down the best place community to improve you and your fantasy rosters and you as a manager. So definitely check it out. And thank you so much for joining us here. Every Thursday, we will be doing these after Thursday Night Football live AMAs. Thanks so much for joining us here in the Fantasy Draft Room.